So I've covered two areas, Affordable Health Care Act and then the FMLA as important legally mandated requirements for the employer, uh, which I think fall quite heavily on HR as far as HR's duties and tasks to maintain, to keep records for, to follow through anything. The last one is going to be workers' compensation. But before we get into that, I just want to mention that whether you agree with Social Security, Medicare, any of those things like unemployment compensation, think of them as insurance systems, insurance programs. We all participate. Not everybody will draw out of that. The same thing for driver's insurance. We all participate, those that drive. And not everybody's going to be using your insurance. Insurance companies, and whether they're for car insurance, life insurance, the government is insuring Social Security, Medicare as well through private insurance, medical insurance, and even unemployment is insured in a sense, is an insurance scheme because the state is contributing, the employer is contributing, and they're all hoping, they're all betting that you won't have that car accident. You're betting you will have the car accident. That's why you buy the insurance. You're betting that you'll get sick. That's why you buy the health insurance. You're betting that you will get unemployed, that you'll be laid off, and that's why the state has the unemployment compensation. So think of these as just simply an insurance approach to creating creating safeguards. I mean, no one wants to drive without other people being insured. And so the same is true for every aspect where insurance works its way in. Because in that case, the idea is that I might have to bear the losses. I might have to personally bear the losses of whatever the risk that I was trying to insure. So, think of it as an insurance plan. No matter what it is, it's not political. It's not right or wrong. It is simply a way to keep the economy on a level and even keel, frankly. So when we talk about workers' compensation, I just want to mention, because the book is really kind of sparse on this one, that it is a very expensive insurance. You have workers, and you must basically worry with their risk. If they're injured on the job, the question is, is it your fault? So what happens in workers' compensation is the states mandate that you buy insurance, so that it's not a question of whether you're at fault. Whether you're at fault or no fault, you don't pay that liability for the worker's injury if the worker slipped off a ladder, and that's because you provided a poor ladder, let's say. It's not your fault, because in the way workers' comp works is that they remove fault from the equation and simply said, let's just insure against all work-related injuries and accidents and losses. And so the employers contribute into an insurance system as well as the state in some aspects, because the state obviously then regulates it. But it allows for for the employees to then basically receive the care that they need for whatever it is based upon their injury or illness, if it's work-related. What I want to say, as far as throwing up a concern here for you in HR, is make sure you get that insurance. Make sure that your firm is participating, especially if you're a small firm, because if you didn't cover the injury, it could eat you up. That kind of liability loss, if it's your fault, could indeed be a problem. You can get you can get workers' compensation insurance after an injury, after a worker's accident, but it is one of the most expensive policies or premiums that you would have to pay. Industry to industry, you will pay more. For types of work that are high risk, if and indeed you're doing roofing, it's one of the most expensive insurances for workers' comp, but you are mandated, you are required to opt in. You must buy that. And even, like I said, even after the accident, if you didn't have it, you're still required to buy into it. It's just that basically you're paying a great deal out of pocket at that late stage. So do think of it as a way of keeping the business afloat. You don't want employees injured, but should they do so, you want to have that workers' compensation insurance already in place to cover those losses. The last aspect in this discussion for you is the unique nature and variety of benefits that go for your family care. I find this to be quite exciting because we're bringing the employer into a real needs approach. In other words, it's not just an issue; it's a need. It's not something that families, especially two wage earner families, think less of. You can't take for granted that there's going to be a stay-at-home parent who can take care of children. So child care becomes an issue. Time off, vacation, leave of absence, family leave, sick leave, mental health leave. There's all sorts of now, you could say, options to give the family additional benefits. Again, employers need to attract qualified workers, and especially with the economy in the way we see it, with two earners, and even then more if you're working extra part-time jobs. The employers need to think about keeping those employees happy, keeping them productive, and that's also keeping them at the job, so that basically daycare issues, sick programs, sick child programs, all of those new things, I think, and new, I mean, when I started working as a full-time individual, they weren't around. So seeing them, it's really great. I think that's a positive direction. The book talks about other things and define other terms, which I don't think we need to do in this lecture. So I encourage you to open them up, read them. The book, I think, does a great job. And again, if there's questions on matters that I haven't talked about, please feel free and let's chat. Let's email.